For this thing to begin. All right, it looks like everything has come online, which is exciting. Happy Wednesday, everybody, for this midweek debrief. We're going to be talking about moments of doubt and faith. And so I'm glad I didn't know with this sunny day if I would have any conversation partners. So I'm glad that you two have made time to be here. You said you were out in the garden this morning?
Out weeding.
Yeah? Weeding already?
Oh, they're growing like crazy.
They're growing like weeds.
Yeah, that's where that phrase comes from, growing like weeds.
But there's a lot fewer on this piece of land than there was on our old house.
Yes, I bet. Yeah. And it's much more contained. Like there's structure to your garden now. So everything's sort of,
Yep.
Hey, I was hoping to debrief the 4 moments of doubt and faith that I talked about on Sunday and just get some feedback on that. Because I've been thinking a lot about, we have sort of an interesting window here that we're going into. So we have one more week in the faith after doubt before Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. And even though I'm going to continue the theme into Resurrection Sunday, and talk about in the same way as life after death, faith after doubt. I'm sort of going to tie those two together. So I have this 1 week coming up, that is like a bridge week. And I want to do something with it. So I thought I would just ask about these moments of faith. So one of the things I struggle with when I come up with ideas like this is that when people hear something like in 4 steps or 4 stages, they often think it's like a to-do list or like, right, that it's sequential.
Like the 5 stages of grief. You have to go through them in the right order or you're doing it wrong.
No, here's an honest question. Do you have to go through the 12 steps in order? Anybody know?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I'm gonna look
I
in there.
think they're intended to be a progression. So yes, I think so.
I am
And
going.
linear fits in with us culturally.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's really interesting because I know somebody who got a call, and the person on the other end of the line was saying like, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for that. And via context, she figured out that he must be on the step where you make reparations. Yeah. So that's interesting. But when people think in like it's a program, like it's a formula, that's the word I've been looking for. And these things, these 4 moments that I'm talking about, it's not a formula for having faith after doubt. It's just recognizing sort of where you are in the moment. And so there's a part of me that says like, I was running through some scenarios this morning when I was trying to think of where I wanted to go with this on Sunday. So like if you say, this is what I believe. Like I want to ask people, can you articulate what you believe? Right? Can you say, this is what I believe? And that's like a moment of faith. And then a different moment of faith is, I know what I don't believe. But the funny thing is that for a lot of people, they have that second moment of knowing what you don't believe. And that's how you come to find out what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like, it doesn't go in order, I think is what I'm saying. And then yet a third moment is, but I get why people believe that. So that's right. That's a different thing. And then the fourth is like, how can we bridge the gap or work together, or how can I still include you in my relational web, a sort of to synthesize and be holistic and all that good stuff. So I was thinking about this in different ways this morning. So for instance, whether it's the Second Amendment or abortion rights or gay marriage, we have so many hot topics in our cultural politics right now. We have all of these culture wars going on that they actually give us a great chance to practice. It's not exactly faith, but that video that we watched on Sunday morning says that politics have become our religion for many people. And so I was using this as a practice this morning to say, can I articulate what I think about gun control or the Second Amendment? Can I articulate what I believe about, say, abortion rights? Can I articulate where I am on same-sex marriage, right? Whatever it is. Like, so I was just using those three as examples. And then, do I know what I don't believe about those things? So, right, I can list those. Where it gets tricky is, can I see the appeal or understand the way that people who see that issue differently than me, can I see why they believe what they believe, or why the way they think about it appeals to them, right? That's a little trickier. So can I articulate what I believe? Okay. Can I tell you what I don't believe? Yeah. Can I understand the way other people see it? Yes. And then the fourth moment for me is, can I bridge the gap or work with them, or, so anyway, those are the things I wanted to throw out. And so I don't know if either of you has anything that you want to say as far as, like, I'm just curious, do you find yourself in the first moment, like, do you know what you believe? Is that like a gear that you are comfortable in?
I think it was John Updike was quoted one time when he was asked if to appear on NPR in their series on This I Believe.
Oh, yeah.
He said, yeah, I don't think so, because what I believe today, I may not believe tomorrow. Which, to me, my beliefs are something I hold loosely. I'm willing to change them if I find something that shows me that the world is different than what I understood.
Really?
But my faith is something that isn't about belief. It's about relationship.
Huh.
And in some ways, it's something that I don't choose to have or not have. It's something that I either recognize is there or I don't recognize, but it's there in any case. It's a deep connection to something beyond what I understand and comprehend, which can be called or named God or the Holy Spirit or the cosmic Christ or the Buddha or no name. But there's something that I have that when I recognize that it's there, it gives me, it calms me and gives me confidence in where I fit into the universe.
That's really interesting. I wonder if we took a poll of our congregation who was like here on Sunday, I wonder how many people would have said, like, I know where I am, what I believe. I mean, I would guess that it's under half, maybe a third would be comfortable in that moment of saying, like, this is what I believe. This is who I am, right? I don't know. What do you think?
I think, maybe half the people are comfortable with where they are.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about our church, I think the other half are willing to acknowledge that they're not comfortable where they are and they're looking and seeking and trying to find answers.
That's so
Whereas in other churches, I would think that maybe half are comfortable with what the church says that they should believe, and the other half go along with it because that's the only way they're allowed to be a part of the church, that church. I think, one of the things about our church is there's not pressure to conform to a particular set of beliefs or understanding of the divine. So I think, but even at that, I think there are some people who would say that they're comfortable with what they are that may not be. They're maybe a little bit in denial of their own discomfort. Our ability to hide from ourselves is pronounced. So, and we're complex human beings.
Yeah. That's really interesting to think about. Because we're not doctrinal, like you don't have to sign a doctrinal statement. We're also not creedal, that we don't say the creeds. They're sort of in the background and they function like the studs inside a wall, but you never really see it or think about it, right? They do their thing and you take them for granted. And, then you mostly are thinking about what color to paint the wall and what to hang on it, but you never think about what's holding it up. So I love that you said like maybe half, and the other half would be comfortable saying like, I'm on a journey. And it makes for, as far as pastoring goes, it makes for really, the phrase like herding cats.
Yes.
But like in a positive way, I'm saying it in a positive way. It's like, you're not really in charge, right? In a sense, you're just helping people get where their heart wants to go. And like, you got to trust God's Spirit to lead and guide, and trust people that they're going to say yes more than they say no. And, you really have to lead in a very open-handed way. It's like you can't hold sand tight or it'll press through your fingers. Like you just got to be okay with it being really open-ended. My friend Pete Rollins pointed out to me one time we were doing this event together, and I had never really thought about it, but he said, in Anglican or Methodist or high churches like ours, that the liturgy functions on our behalf. It believes on our behalf. And then we sort of outsource our belief to the liturgy. And that way we don't have to generate the belief. We don't have to always be carrying it. We let the liturgy believe for us. Yeah. And we're not like at Vermont Hills, we're not super liturgical, but you can see even the little bit of liturgy that we have, like we use as a framework, you can see how it functions for us. That the call and response, right, is a confession. There's going to be prayers that are offered, even though they're scripted, right? There's going to be like a final charge in the benediction. And that those things, we sing the songs of the faith, and in that we like reaffirm we confirm our faith, and we teach each other. And so in the reading of scripture, we connect with the tradition. So yeah, even the little bit of liturgy we have, I can see how it functions.
And I would say it's absolutely necessary to have some structure, something to look toward, to have something to measure where we are. Otherwise, we're just in a void with nothing to gauge ourselves.
Yeah.
Either that, or we're in such a structured environment that we don't have an option as a person to doubt or to vary from the the doctrine or the specific, rigid structure. But I think structure is absolutely necessary. Ritual and ceremony are absolutely necessary for us to even begin to build community, or to have a structure against which somebody can measure their own place.
Mm-hmm. So for me, this third moment of, can you understand people on the other side of an issue? I've put a lot of energy into trying to understand people who are in a different place than me on gun rights, Second Amendment, abortion issue, and same-sex marriage. I keep using those three examples, but trying to understand the appeal of people who see things differently than me. I put a lot of energy into that. So for me, in my phase of life, I find myself in this fourth moment, which is, how can we work together or bridge the gap or include one another in our service of the greater community to lead to more human flourishing and goodness in the world? So that, for me, I find myself in that fourth moment of trying to figure out how we're going to do it. And I'll just I didn't know if I was going to share this today, but I'll tell you all this because I think it's pretty interesting. I've realized in the last week that I'm going to go from being in a church that's really liberal, if you want, whatever, progressive, open-minded, but in a city that's largely that way. And this summer, I'm moving to a very different context where it's possible that we will be an outlier in that community that's a little more conservative, especially socially, as a voice of this. It's going to be a very interesting shift, because as much as I have loved, and I really have, my work with this Vermont Hills congregation, my one thing that I haven't ever been able to wrap my head around is, but how do we get a hearing and present a faith that's compelling when so much of our city is exactly where we are on nearly every issue? It's tough to get a hearing when you're 1 degree different than the water you're swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may have an opportunity to try to bridge a bigger gap. And unfortunately, we won't be along for the ride or understand how it happens. But for you, I'm excited because that experience is going to be really important.
I think so. It's been fun to work with this Vermont Hills congregation and to really practice together, whether it's in brainstorming or in our conversation groups, but to really work on how do we combat the us versus them mentality of enemy making machine, and how do we get out of the consumerism that's offered to us, post-capitalism, where, oh my gosh, I heard the funniest thing yesterday. I'm going to use this. I don't know when I'm going to use this, but they used to say, even 10, 20, 30 years ago, they used to say, we have these experiences and we pay for these things, but ultimately they don't satisfy, right? That used to be a thing. And preachers really would take advantage of that, And I was listening to this to a philosophy podcast, and the guy was saying, he says, yeah, but now between Amazon and the pandemic and so many other changes, he says, now we're in a completely different place. Now we know that the experience or the product we're going to buy will not be satisfying and won't equal our expectations. And we do it anyway. We consume knowing ahead of time that it won't live up to our expectations. And we're compelled. Yeah.
We're conditioned to consume.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just thought that was funny because I know that I grew up hearing sermons about we do these things and then we find out they don't satisfy, right? And then I know I've said that kind of thing. But now we're in this new moment where we're like, I know this isn't going to be great, but what else am I going to do?
Mhm.
You pay for it anyway.
Consumption has become a habit, overconsumption or empty consumption.
Yeah. Yeah. I had just not thought of it like that. And just buying things compulsively, you know? All right. Well, do either of you have thoughts on these 4 moments? Any more thoughts?
I agree with you. It's kind of hard to talk about the 4 stages because they're not discrete.
Right.
Because in some ways I'm in the harmony, in some ways I'm in I don't know that I've been in the simplicity since I was about 12 years old.
Huh.
But the other 3, I'm to some degree in them all the time at the same time.
Huh. Interesting.
And it depends on the time of day, it depends on my mood, it depends on a number of things. But, there are times when I feel very much in the harmony mode. There are times when I just don't know which way's up. I mean, there's so much craziness going on now. That thing you were talking about, the video that we watched Sunday morning.
Yeah.
It just boggles my mind how nationalism has become our religion for so many people.
Yeah.
And I find that disturbing, and I find it ironic too when I've heard people reject. In fact, Bill Maher had a video out a number of years ago, religiosity.
Religulous.
Really? Yeah. Yeah, where he's basically mocking religion, and it's like, okay, Bill, you mocked religion, but look what happens when religion starts to decline. It simply shifts to something else, potentially more destructive.
Yeah.
So we need to recognize that whatever that compulsion is to be a part of whatever that is, is a basic part of our human nature. And that's why I think we need to have intentional structures like the church that can channel that energy and that desire. But ironically, with the bowling alone syndrome, all of those organizations have kind of dissolved. And now it's just this movement that has taken a life of its own.
It's almost a free for all. It really is my way. I'm empowered as the individual.
Yeah.
And I can believe whatever I want.
Yeah.
And civilization is ending because my white male supremacist identity is being threatened. Oh my God, it's the end of civilization. It's going to be brown and black people and gay people and all this other weird stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is just so upside down. So strange.
Yeah.
And yet, as a white male, an older white male, it's my culture they're talking about that I would just as soon not participate in, but there it is. But I'm not afraid of ending civilization because I'm not in control, because I know I'm not in control.
Boy, okay, that's interesting. On Palm Sunday, I'm actually going to talk about insurrection ahead of resurrection and the threat of insurrection from Palm Sunday. It's what got Jesus killed, right?
Yeah.
But we haven't had anything like that in American culture in quite a while where there was true terror and threat of insurrection. And so it has been something that it's been a fantasy or a fiction or a fetish. And unfortunately, there's this group, let's call them evangelicals, who fantasize about the end and apocalypse. But in the strangest way possible, which is not about the catastrophe we actually find ourselves in, but about some future thing that like ends everything. And because it is such a fantasy or a fetish in that subculture, they actually act in order to bring it about.
Yes.
It is the wildest thing. What's happening is then it's creating a what do they call it? A crisis for the rest of us, where we're like, you guys you're gonna ruin this whole thing if you're not careful, but it's because you're afraid of the thing getting ruined.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're throwing us into crisis and catastrophe and real tremors of, the threat. But it's coming out of your fear and fascination with this thing called the end that you're actually in danger of bringing about the end.
Yep.
It's just like, if you could come down off whatever intoxicating fantasy you've got yourself whipped up into, if you could come down off of that and just settle down, we could stabilize this boat and steady the ship.
So how you were talking about that phase of getting to understand how how do you understand that? I mean, it's or how do you address that?
Well, I don't know. Okay, I don't know how to address it yet. But I do understand the appeal of it. When you think that history is predetermined, there is a sort of weird therapeutic thing that says, as bad as things are, I don't need to worry. God's got it all figured out, or God's got it in control, or whatever, it is. And if you think that, like, for instance, the book of Revelation is about a future apocalypse, there is something oddly satisfying and almost numbing to say, things are really crazy right now, but ultimately it's going to turn out okay. Now, obviously that's horseshit, because it's got them all worked up into a frenzy and behaving badly and going against their own, moral whatever. Mm-hmm. So I know that this is how we know it's a fantasy, right? It's fiction, and it's not reality, but I can understand the appeal of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you think that alcohol makes you funnier and more clever and other people more attractive, and so you overdo it. You get less funny and less clever, and people don't think you're very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I get the appeal. It's intoxicating.
But it's an interpretation of God that we don't tend to buy into. And so that is part of that inability to bridge across to the other side. We don't believe that God is going to provide a lifeline to us at the end of burning it down.
Yeah.
When it's trying to address cults. Yeah. How do you get into the mind of people who are trapped in cults? I mean, that's what the whole deprogramming thing was about, because it's all about their relationships and vulnerability and dependence and all of that stuff. And you have to kind of take them out of that environment and break down some of those structures that were built.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're talking about a cult that's taking on a huge amount of influence in the world, in our country.
Yeah.
And how do we know that we aren't a cult ourselves? You know, I guess that's something we need to at least look at, if not embrace, but to at least say, okay, how might we be falling into some of the same traps in our point of view?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe I am, but it's important to look at it so that I don't get drawn into a way of looking at the world that is at odds with how the world actually is.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, it's going to be fun. So this week on Sunday, I'm talking about being post something and why the modifier matters. So whatever modifier you add to anything, like the modifier, it does something, it's functioning in some way, and that modifiers matter. So that's going to be fun to talk about. And then on Palm Sunday, I'm talking about insurrection before resurrection. That's going to be really good. And then on Easter Sunday, I'm talking about life after death as faith after doubt. So I'm looking forward to all of those. But and then that will be the end of the Lenten series. So I've really enjoyed this faith after doubt thing and these midweek debriefs. I'm getting a lot out of them. I'm really enjoying thinking all of this through. But yeah, I'm hoping to land this thing well and bring it in for a solid landing, and for people to feel like that was a good, constructive conversation that we were able to have. There's that moment on the cross where Jesus believes himself to be God forsaken. Mm-hmm. And, there's always a debate, if he really believed that, or if he was feigning, or maybe he was God forsaken. Like, those are really the three options. And I don't know that I'm going to touch on that at all. Maybe on Good Friday, I'll do something with that. But I always like to honor Lent as sort of the possibility of stepping back from all of the glory and the triumph and the victory of Easter, and to step back into the shadows a little bit and to say, like, not everything is okay or perfect or in right order, or right.
And not everything was rosy back then. If you focus on the glory.
Yeah. If I can just say one more thing about the evangelicals, I think that the toughest thing about penetrating that worldview is that you have this weird conception of God that in the Old Testament, God was a God of wrath and law, rules. And then Jesus brought us in and introduced a God of grace and kindness. But at some point that will come to an end, and the God of wrath will return and settle the score. So we're really in this parenthesis of grace, kindness, love, right? The age of the Spirit. But that will come to an end, and that other God will return. Like, that is the toughest thing for me to penetrate, because no matter what you say about the God revealed in Christ, there's always this thing like, yeah, but the angry God's coming back and they're going to pay. And you can justify almost anything under that umbrella of the evildoers and the unrighteous will get what's coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's by me now or whether it's by God in the future, but they will get it. And when you have that as your framing narrative, it's really tough to penetrate, because you can say almost anything you want now. You're like, yeah, we're on vacation. This isn't real life.
Yeah, what is that drive for retribution? You know, for punishment.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely see that retribution in the discussion of prison reform.
Mm,
And
yeah.
Yeah, they need to be punished. And even when they're out of prison, they were in prison once, so we need to continue to punish them. You know?
bread and water and
Well, the fact that ex-cons have such a difficult time finding employment or a place to live or acceptance back into society, and the whole point is supposed to be they paid their debt. You know, they should be able to vote and participate fully again.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right, I'm going to end the live stream part and we're going to go off the record. Let me end that one and I'll end this one. All